Are you on edge? We live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of the Edge of Everyday podcast, which drops bi-monthly on all your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and tough talk about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. Real talk with real people that sparks provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe. Sandra Bargman, on the edge of every day. Thanks for listening.
Pressing down on you, no man has fall. Under pressure.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman, and welcome back to the Edge of Everyday, now at maximizeyou.life and streaming on your favorite podcast platforms. Are you a change maker? Do you walk between worlds, between cultures, between systems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, the Edge of Everyday is the place for you. In a nutshell, this podcast is about pushing boundaries and exploring rough edges through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues. It's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradox and contradicting identities live in our beliefs and in our understandings, both individually and collectively. We live in edgy, challenging times. We cannot keep looking away from the ugly, from the difficult, and silence is no longer an option. Life isn't black or white, it's both, and I want to talk about that. I want to face the tension of paradox, and I want to engage in the hard conversations. I want to explore the rough edges between our light-filled brilliance and our dark, shadowy corners. Because the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same. And that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So, thanks for tuning in. What is cultural intelligence? How does it intersect with DEIB and with being a change maker in these challenging times? Today, we are live in the hive with high-performance coach, TEDx speaker, and entrepreneur, Kristin Joy Ekkens, for a compelling conversation about reaching out of our comfort zones to bridge the cultural divide. How can we be more inclusive? How can we, as 21st century leaders, embrace a more expanded understanding of adaptability? Join us to learn more about the transformational journey towards inclusion, positive cultural change, and high-performance leadership with Kristen. So without further ado, it's time to introduce our guest. Kristin Joy Ekkens is a TEDx speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, executive coach, strategic advisor, and master facilitator. She's the founder and CEO of Exponential Inclusion, a global impact company building inclusive and innovative cultures. With over 20 years of experience, Kristen partners with global leaders and organizations to create lasting positive change. She recently completed an executive program at Stanford Graduate Business School and holds certifications in Edgewalking facilitation, cultural intelligence, and high-performance coaching. Welcome, Kristen.
Woo! Thank you, Sandra. I'm so excited to be here with you. And I will say, as I heard you talk about the podcast again, I'm just so excited for our conversation today.
Oh, thank you. I am too. It is, I'm sure my listeners can tell by my very excited welcome that you and I know each other and have spoken many, many times. Although Kristen and I have never met in person, which I find kind of bizarre, but such is the world, the Zoom world we live in.
That's right.
So I like to tell my listeners how I know my guests. And you heard me say Edgewalking facilitator in that lovely CV. And that's how I know Kristen. I met her through the Edgewalking community. She and I are both, we were not in the same cohort though. We're both facilitators within the Edgewalker community, right? Yes, no.
Yeah, correct.
And I'm always eager to plug Edgewalkers at any point that I can. And so I'm sure Kristen will be sharing how Edgewalker understandings and skills and philosophies work in tandem with her cultural intelligence. So before we begin, I like to ask my guests two questions. The first is, what identity do you lead with?
Ooh. Easy answer or complex
No.
answer?
Complex, go for it. This is the edge of
Okay.
every day.
Well, I'll say it was about 2.5 years ago that I learned of my identity as an Edgewalker, that there was a label that actually could be put to that. I've always known it, but
Totally.
having a label to say. So Dr. Judy Neal, when I met her, when I understood, what she understood and what she was putting out to the world in terms of Edgewalker, to me, the identity that I connect with the most and have for a long time, but felt like a misfit from everything. It was, I'm an Edgewalker.
Bam.
Bam, bing, like, oh, duh, all these things that happened at once for me with that. And I used to say then I'm an entrepreneur when I worked in organizations. And then I'd say I'm an entrepreneur. And I still say that I'm a social entrepreneur. I work on helping to create different cultures, bettering cultures to better the world all around the world. So it's in that social sense, but then also with a business mindset that I'm doing it. Yeah. So I would say that the identity that I attach most to is Edgewalker, and that even seeps into my home life. I have 2 boys and a husband, a dog, in the home life, that space, I'm still Edgewalking no matter what. It's an identity I can't shake. It's who I am.
Totally. I 100% agree and know this in my bones. And, I had the same. I Googled how I discovered Judy. I started saying a phrase, walking the edges of my community. I Googled that because I used it in a book a chapter I was reading for a book, and boom, Edgewalkers came up, and it was I was like mind blown, like there it is. That is all the not fitting in. That's not ever wanting to be in the center, in the status quo, ever. Always wanting to hybrid and cross-pollinate.
Yes, but then also understanding, and this does get back to identity and where we'll be going with our conversation, I'm sure, but the understanding that the shadow sides too, and the shadow sides of walking that edge. And for me, the burnout that could come with that. So I had to understand, and related to identity, I had to remove, untangle myself from the identity of who I was as a corporate worker, right? As what my title was, what my expertise was in, what people knew me as. And that for some reason, I allowed for it to come in to try to take hold of who I was. And I had to really realize, no, like that's a shadow side of being so passionate about something like cultural intelligence. It's so passionate. It's not a bad thing in and of itself, the topic, the mission, but then to allow it to make it become your identity is where the challenges come in.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. And that is the constant, the Edgewalker path is understanding the edge between the light and the dark, the spirit and the mundane, the spirit and the flesh, the fleshy knowing, as a friend of mine calls it. Yeah. Yes, Kay Aldred. Check out my conversation with Kay Aldred. Learn about fleshy knowing. So you just mentioned, I'm going to skip over. I always ask, what worlds do you walk between? But you've included that in your answer. So I'm going to jump because you just brought up cultural intelligence. But first I want to say exponential inclusion. I love the name of your company. That just like, boom, goosebumps, because it so speaks about the work that we do in the world, we hope has this kind of impact, the goodness flowing out exponentially.
Yes. Yes.
So tell us, what is cultural intelligence? And talk to us about your lived experience. How did you awaken to your cultural intelligence, and what has been the evolution of your work that brought you to this exponential inclusion company?
Ooh, I love that. I love talking about the evolution because that's what it is, right? It continues to evolve. I first started in the space of culture and people and language. That's what I say. I work in the heart or the intersection of that people, culture, and language. And that has been since a young age. So this work for me and the mission and passion around, I didn't know the term at the time, but cultural intelligence, but understanding it more simply as human connection. That for me started when I was in elementary school. The real work, though, as I went further into it and realized, so I lived in an area. This is part of my story itself, is that I grew up in a space that is in the inner city, and it was a very multicultural place. It was also one that I learned street language. I learned street smarts very early. So worlds I walk between that people wouldn't realize, that is one of those worlds that I walk between too. So the place that I started to see and understand myself, my own identity, the work that I do now, how I've become passionate about this space is because I've met people who are very different from me starting at a very young age. I believe this to be true. I believe also that God, the universe, has placed me in places that I can see and meet people who are very different from me. And also we have very strong connections and similarities. Sometimes you have to dig deeper to see what those similarities are, because on the surface, it wouldn't look like there are any. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, pues hablo español y tú también. Bueno, okay, entonces. So I said, and sometimes you realize, oh, you speak Spanish too? So do I. Okay, well, then let's go. Let's have a conversation, because our worldview just shifted. And now we're in that space together, speaking another language, having a heart culture almost that's different. So to your question, I resonated at a very young age with a different type of heart culture than what I grew up in. And so I lived in Spain, I lived in Mexico, I lived in Costa Rica, studying abroad and living with host families. And that helped me connect on a whole nother level.
Wow. I loved, so you were an exchange student.
I was like 4 different times.
Wow.
And it's I'm part of my studies. My degree is in Spanish language and literature, but that doesn't mean you speak fluently when you're done with the degree, right? You have to find
get on the ground.
That's right, to be on the ground and connect with people. But what I found, so yes, the degree was in language and in reading and the literature around that. It was also in understanding the history of people, the evolution of people, understanding the dark side of conquistadores, the conquestors, understanding the entire history of how that came to be and how the United States even came to be, how Latin America came to be. And it brought me back to, and I'll get back to your question, but this is the path.
No, this is fantastic.
Okay.
Go.
All right. It brought me to something I never knew how passionate I would be about, but about ancient wisdom and finding the ancient wisdom in places that sometimes when the conquestors came in, just completely squashed the wisdom that was there, or hid it completely. And now it's the opportunity to uncover it and share it with the world in a different way that connects them now to what was known before, that was brilliant, incredible, and what teaches us something we need to know in terms of light today. And that's what I believe why I'm here, right? That's to help bridge those divides.
I am so with you. Amen, sister. Yeah, and it's time to be revealed as now.
It is.
Just firmly shifted into the age of Aquarius. But anyway, continue.
Well, so I think the piece around, learning and living with other cultures. When I came back to the States, I had a reverse culture shock, and this was a major milestone in my own life. Yes, because most people, or many people, have culture shocks when they go to cultures that are different from their own. I had it when I came back into supposedly what was supposed to be my culture, and I realized this doesn't fit with my heart. This something's not right. I don't operate the same way as this culture does, but I was trained to. I grew up in this space. Why can't I just fit back in again? And I couldn't. So I went into this, I would say it was a minor depression. It was I have to change things. And I was working in a restaurant at the time, and I was still in college when I just said, I can't work in this restaurant anymore because it's too surfacey. And it's not that, I needed that money to pay for college, to pay my bills, to pay my rent. But what I found was a different path. And that different
you were
path,
resonating and vibrating very differently.
that's right. And that path for me was teaching English to migrant workers who came to, I live in Michigan. They were coming to Michigan to pick apples, blueberries, that type of thing. And I found that was my first step into reaching across very different cultural borders, in the sense of we sat at picnic tables and I would teach English after full days of the migrant workers picking apples. And why I did that was because I understood there was a skill set that I had that was necessary for the individuals I was working with who wanted that skill set, who said, if we get this skill set of English skills, then our families will be better off, because there's a potential for us to actually have economic inclusion, is what we call it now, but be able to make more money for our families, be able to get out of the cycle if this is what we don't want to be in, and find a space where we can belong and be at home rather than traveling around. Now, some migrant workers want to travel around, so there's nothing wrong with that at all. To me, it was who are those ones who want this skill set that I have, and they have skill sets that I need as well. And so we're bridging together across these divides. So that's really, if you ask me what sparked why I'm actually doing exponential inclusion, is because I saw the heart of migrant workers, and then went on to work with immigrants and refugees that were coming to the United States. And I saw their heart and they saw mine. And we realized together we can actually help each other. We can bridge the gaps that are there that shouldn't be there. And that spread to, okay, wait, their skill sets are growing in English, because that's, again, the skill I was teaching them around American culture, and also the skill set of English language. And then I realized, hold on, they're improving in those, but there's a group of people who's not, and they're actually blocking the economic progress. It was the managers and supervisors. So I worked with companies and would go in and help do cultural bridging at that point. And this is like 20 years ago. 15 to 20 years ago, that I was solidly in working with a nonprofit, going into companies and helping bridge that gap. And that just set me on this projection that it was, I want to be able to do systems change work, because I see it at that level of more than just the individual work that needs to be done, but in empowering individuals, incredibly important. But I realized I had a skill set of going in systems and helping to shift that. So to fast forward very fast, that's where we come now into exponential inclusion, that we're actually working on a system level, creating an ecosystem to help create more inclusion on a worldwide scale.
Wow. So what are the skills particularly that you feel like, can you name a few that you go in and you work with in the corporate world and help people? And how is that different from just an overall diversity understanding?
Yes, really, really good question. So help me get there if I don't answer it fully back, because I want to answer that for you. Yep. So the thing that I find now, and this is at a time period where I'm going to start with DEIB, and that acronym is like in the United States, this isn't all over the world, but in the United States, it almost has a poison to it.
Oh, it's so being attacked.
Right?
Yeah.
It's being attacked. That
Yeah.
is clear. And
And
so,
just for our listeners,
yes,
DEIB,
yes, diversity,
diversity.
equity, inclusion, and belonging. And for me, and this might sound controversial, I don't really care about the acronym. To me, who cares? Who cares what the words are? The words aren't what matters. It's the work that's being done and the importance what's behind the words. So truly, I'm one of those in the space that would say, let's get rid of the acronym then, because that's not what this is. Who cares? Let's figure out how we state this, though, in a way that people understand what we're trying to do. So the trying to do piece, there is the simplest way I can describe this is there's diversity when there's more than one person in a room. You and I have diversity right now on this call, even though we're both two white women. We also have very different backgrounds in education and all of that. We have different ways of seeing the world. So we have diversity here. The more diverse that groups become, the more bridges need to be built, because there are things that can happen then, right? When you get together in a room with someone that you have wildly different worldviews, there's a higher chance for clashes. Mm-hmm. And this is where inclusion comes into the picture. So when I see that people have, and even power structures that are shifting, and within organizations, for example, when there is someone who has a higher level of power or title or whatever it might be, they also have the responsibility to be more inclusive, to bring people into conversations, to allow their voices to be heard. So the other person may silence themselves or be silenced by others. And right. That means they're not being included, they're being excluded.
Right. That's the pushback. That's always the pushback you hear, is that, yeah, you talk a great game about DEIB, but you don't implement it really. We just give it lip service.
Yes, window dressing, lip service, all the words, right? And this is where companies and organizations get in trouble, because they put it on their websites. They say, this is what we're doing. And then they don't have the lived experience. A new employee, for example, doesn't have the lived experience of that. And then they leave. So then HR talks about, we've got an issue with our talent retention. And then when you dig down into it, you say, who's leaving?
Yeah.
And you look and you see, and it's different for different groups. So it's not just about race and ethnicity, which is, I think, what we often go to in the United States. And that's not on a global scale always what happens, but we go to that. Sometimes it's about gender. Sometimes it's about diverse abilities that we have. Sometimes diverse thinking and just having people thinking different ways. Mm-hmm. I will say I worked in Silicon Valley for a while, and this is where I commuted from Michigan and worked there. And I could tell you, I was very different than my colleagues, who many of them were from California, from Silicon Valley. And I will say, I loved the culture. I mean, because there's so many Edgewalkers in a sense. They're different entrepreneurs. It was an entrepreneurial mindset, which I had not worked in the space of just that. And that was life-giving. And at the same time, I realized very quickly, I'm going to have to operate differently than I do when I'm working with companies in Michigan, and talk differently and figure this out. So this is where the skills come in to your question. Cultural intelligence actually is one of those key skills. So it's not the only thing I do, but it is one of the foundational skills I think people need. And there's actually 4 skills related to cultural intelligence. And it comes down to, first, our drive. So our motivation. So it's actually called CQ drive. And there's an assessment. There's all of that surrounding this, right? To help people understand what is my cultural intelligence and how I work and relate with others. And that's the definition. How do I work and relate more effectively with people from a variety of different cultural backgrounds? So it really picks up where emotional intelligence leaves off. Right. And the skills then, just quickly, your drive, it's your motivation on working with someone, especially, when that feeling in your gut, it hits you and you're like, oh, that doesn't resonate. Someone says something And it almost feels like they've punched you at your core values. That is the time where cultural intelligence has to kick in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I can so see it, feel it. Yeah. Like because, in that culture, that's a good thing, what
Yeah.
they've expressed. Yeah.
Yes. And even
Yeah.
across genders, right?
Yeah.
So it happens, in all of these cultural contexts, socioeconomic, whatnot. So like I might say
Yes.
something when I grew up in a space that we didn't have a lot of money. We grew up in the inner city, and for us, that was our norms and the norms that I had there. But then when I'd go to friends' houses and they lived out in the suburbs, and it was like, what do I say? What don't I say? How do I try to fit in here? How do I feel like I don't know if I have the skills to operate in this landscape?
Yeah, but your curiosity around it, a
Yes.
lifelong curiosity, high vibe curiosity, and that's
Yes.
edge walking 101.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
about it all. Like I want to experience that. I want to figure
Yes.
this out. I want to get in there.
Mm. That is a key to cultural intelligence, and where I think these things to me started to dovetail that the edge walking and cultural intelligence, you need to be able to be curious, you need to step out and be courageous, you
Mm.
need to pause and say, yeah, this is really uncomfortable for me because this is not my norm, this isn't what I'm used to, but I'm going to pause and allow myself to just hear and observe and learn
And witness. Yeah.
and witness before I take action. So, everything I just said there, I actually told you the 4 skills.
Yeah. No, got it.
Right? So, it's your drive, it's your knowledge, it's the strategy you take, and then the action. But the action is the 4th thing. And that is what everyone sees about you after you've done the 3 things, which are mainly internal that they don't see.
Yes. Inward breathing. Don't react. Yes,
Don't
exactly.
react in the moment. Just pause, is what we say
Yeah, the
often.
power of the pause.
Power of the pause.
I
So none
use that all
of
the
this,
time.
yes, none of this is rocket science. You
No,
know,
but it's not a lot of people, I shouldn't say very few, but not a lot of people have these skills.
Mm.
That's
And
why they call it emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, cultural
yes,
intelligence.
that's right. It's an
We're
intelligence.
so reactive.
We are reactive, and all of those things are skills that can be learned.
Yeah,
And that's where
indeed.
it's really important for us all to grasp onto that, because again, to your question, I when I lived abroad, oh, I wish my cultural intelligence was higher. I wish I knew about that. It's like learning while you're driving, you're learning.
Yeah.
It's ouch, ouch, bang, like you're getting beat up a little bit, getting hit by other cars because you have no idea how to turn and or switch lanes or anything. And that's what it felt like. And so when I reflected back on my experience, when I started to know about cultural intelligence and see it and understand, wow, this is for each and every one of us to always be working on, then I realized I owe some apologies to some people, and I hope they understand that I was learning
Yeah. Well, hey, yeah, of
the
course.
hard way, but learning, right?
Well, your beaming heart shine, I'm sure shone through back then because it shines very brightly now, my friend.
I appreciate you. And this is the learning phase won't ever stop. I think that's
And
the
that's another,
exciting,
yeah,
right? This
for every human,
every
hopefully.
I
I mean, isn't that the joy of life?
yes. And it's to really put yourself in that mindset. To put yourself in that mindset though. And so what I talk about too in terms of skills, actually I had a call with a prospective client yesterday, and we have had to reframe. So back to the DEIB,
Mm.
we have had to reframe this conversation. I'm not changing the name of my company because that is what I believe needs to happen, exactly what I named it as exponential inclusion. But we do need to meet people where they're at. And so changing how, if we drop the DEIB acronym, it's still figuring out how do we give people the skills they need in order to show up as good humans to each other and to make this world a better place. And so I call those humaning skills. So cultural intelligence is part of that. Emotional intelligence is part of that. Adaptability, learning how to adapt. That's all wrapped up in all of those things. We actually call it, when I was talking to that prospect, I pitched to them a program around future readiness, right? And future ready leadership skills. So if you think about what do you need to be ready for the future, and some will say, well, I don't know what the future is going to bring. Exactly. Be ready for uncertainty, be ready for change, be ready for the curiosity you're going to need, because your paradigms will shift and will have to shift. And if they don't, you're going to be stuck in a place that will be shadow side always, or darkness.
Right. Well, this gets to, boy, oh boy, the times that we're in. And, you've just talked about how you might have to change, think about rephrasing things, but in your work, have you noticed in the United States a shift with your clients? I mean, are you working with, you and I talked about this with
Yes.
our other friend, Amy Lynn Durham, in our podcast Mastermind, and about how we're meeting the times in which we find ourselves, and particularly reaching across to people who aren't curious, don't want to learn, don't are unimpressed, non-curious about actual facts and actual differences, and are very uncomfortable with differences, very tribal. Are you finding in your work, how are you bumping up against those changes now?
Yes, bumping always. It's some of the examples. So first I'll say, I'm finding as it almost feels like lockdowns are happening. So fear conquers over love in some of the organizations that I'm in, or teams that I'm in, that before maybe would say, even large organizations, I won't name any here, but you could go online and see any one of them that have said before on their websites, oh, we're inclusive.
Yes. Walmart, I'll say it.
There you go.
That I read about.
Big one.
Yeah.
And even locally for me, we have some major ones that it's like the fear that came in for what might happen and what might change. Let's quickly stop that. But then also there are things that laws will be put into place that will stop people. Even I've done projects with the US government, and in that space, I've known that departments that I've worked with gone. So things like this, it's like the structures are changing, but
I can't imagine working with the government that's coming in. I'll use government loosely.
Yeah, that it's one of those things though that I've realized too. I cannot allow that to negatively impact my mind or the work that I'm set out and here passionate about. What I can say though is, and what we were talking about in that conversation you brought up is even, do we choose to work with those people? If we have a choice who we work with, do we choose to work with people who think politically very different from us? And my feeling too about this is, yes, I do, because I believe we are all human. And a piece of, no matter how dark you are, this might be controversial, but no matter how dark you are or how you see the world, but a piece of me is in you and you and me, because we're all connected. So what I have to see in you is I see that piece that I don't agree with at all. And when the time is right, we'll build a bridge together. Yeah. Right now might not be that time that it needs to happen, right? And for others, it's like, hey, now is the time, because guess what? We're in the same family. We're in the same, friend group or whatever it might be. And they still are the human that I knew them as. But at the same time, we have a big disconnect, because it comes down to my own personal values and their personal values.
Right. And my own human rights.
And their own human rights. And what makes me me and what makes you you. I have to respect you have those ideas and concepts. So I'm not going to try to change you. And at the same time, I'm not going to be apologetic for how I feel about other humans and trying to raise them up in a different way than they might be, or the understanding that I have about the world. And from what I've seen, again, tracing back to working with immigrants, refugees, migrant workers, the understanding that I have from my worldview on that, the understanding I have from studying about conquestors, understanding power dynamics, understanding what hasn't worked in history and what can repeat itself in a negative way or what can repeat itself in a positive way. So that's where I feel like now is my I don't know what the word is, the time that I need to stand up and be bold, right?
Yes.
And courageous.
We all do.
Yes, we do. For all of us who are saying, hey, there is light in this world. I can tell you so many people I've talked to that say there's light in this world. But right now the darkness is like suffocating.
Yeah, I'm calling it ferocious compassion.
Mm.
And yeah, of meeting the times with an open heart, but a willingness to understand the veracity of what needs to be moved through.
Yes.
And the light that needs to be infused into it.
Mm.
And I love the word ferocious, not fierce, ferocious, because it does have it's edgier. It has a little danger to it that there is,
Yes.
that listen, the light workers are powerful. We're not like, at least not me,
Right.
not like precious no, yeah. And we're meeting people. I'll speak for myself.
Mm.
I'm meeting people where they are, but I'm very present to what it is that I'm greeted with.
Yes.
I don't need to be I don't need to be cruel. I don't unkind. I'm here to bring the light, but I'm not here to make anyone feel comfortable about harmful choices and harmful ways of wanting to walk in the world.
Mm. And this is where it gets to the E in DEIB, that it's the equity piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to understand what that is, I mean, this is why the words are important, because there is a common understanding. It's not about being equal. It's not equal. And this is where I've had to do a lot of work with companies to say equal is not the same as equity. Like for my kids, an example, I don't give them equal things because their needs are different. They're very different boys. And so we make sure that there's equity in it, that there is a space that they're seeing the world, getting what they need, and at the same time it may be different for each boy. Right. This is the thing that comes in for us too, though, when there are systems that are not equitable,
right,
specifically for groups of people.
It's baked in.
It's baked in. And this is where there's a push against those systems. And I think we have to do that. We have to break through. And oftentimes there is a breakdown in order to break through.
Indeed. The chaos before and we feel collie in the chaos. And I've often said, maybe it just needs to all be burnt down. And right, exactly. And the phoenix will rise, and the light, like the time that we're in now, the solstice reminds us of the wombing and going into the deep mother and the darkness, and that light does return, and just staying close to that. Actually, so that there's a clue. This is not going to run before solstice. This is going to run in January. So we're taping it right before solstice. But yeah. Boy, we could go on and on about that, but I want to get to your exponential joy and your El Camino walk.
Woo, yes.
So, yeah, but actually, before I get to that, or as we're getting to that, you said something, and I think this is a great point to put in your ethos, your personal ethos. This is the great juxtaposition, the seg into exponential joy. Tell us, Kristen, what is your ethos, your mission in life?
Yes. Yes. So my mission in life, I say is to be here to spread love, light, and joy. And I do this through Ubuntu. And Ubuntu is an African principle. It means we are who we are because of others, or I am who I am because you are who you are. And so I actually did a TEDx talk on this about 10 years ago. Don't try to find it because you won't. We were just laughing about that. It was a corporate TEDx, meaning in-house in a company with their leaders. But the thing that I talked about was actually I showed my DNA results. I did. I showed my DNA results, but that traced back human history all the way back to the start and where I started, and my ancestors and where we started. And what it showed in that was that it traced back to one mitochondrial Eve, and that was in East Africa. And from there, we went our own different ways. Our ancestors selected the paths that they went on. And that made us who we are today. But saying we're all connected at our very core, we are all connected. So this is where even exponential inclusion came from. But to move that forward, one thing is I have something in stealth mode that I can't quite talk about yet, but maybe come January, we can put a little link to it. But I have two new things I'm working on. One I can talk about, exponential joy. The other one, it's rising from the surface of what we have been talking about. Exponential inclusion will continue to work within businesses and helping shape their cultures, team cultures and organizations to be more inclusive. This other thing is for humanity. It's to help us raise humanity. And I have a new business partner in South Africa that together we met 9 months ago, knew we were soul sisters, and said, whoop, this is it, time. So she taught me, actually, even though I've been talking about Ubuntu for 10 years, people who've seen me talk about this, they say Ubuntu when they see me. They don't say Kristen, they say Ubuntu.
Oh, I love it.
But what she taught me was really what it meant. Because even when we started talking about it, she said, we're in this together. It's we. And this was before we had our own business concept together that we were working on. This was when she was helping me with my business concepts around exponential inclusion. And she said, no, we're in this together. And I'm like, we are? And then she's like, yes, no matter what, here to serve you, here to help you. We're a team. It's we. And I said, it's we. I know it's we. But it had to switch in my mind because the I is so strong in the United States.
Oh, to our downfall. Yeah.
And in other places too. It's not just the United States. Of course. Right. But for me, it was that understanding of the true lived Ubuntu and collective mindset is really in unity. When we get to this, the oneness piece is what I've been after my entire life, but not being able to see it brightly. And now things are starting to come into shape. And I see it and say, why are we not all working towards this? We need to be. It helps us all. It helps us individually. It helps us collectively. But we do have to start with the I to move to the we, to move to the all together. And Dr. Judy Neal, I actually was talking to her yesterday, and she reminded me of that, right? We've got to move to the all at some point, but we're going to all be at different stages in that process. So that Ubuntu part lives true for me. I tried to live true to it as being my ethos, but that's in my heart where I hold people, that I have a love for people and figuring out how to do this. So
lovely. So, El Camino.
Yes.
How was that? Tell us the story of that. Why? I mean,
yes.
Of course, obviously, I understand why I want to go to walk there, the El Camino. I haven't done it yet. I mean, I understand the pilgrimage, the desire to do this. I've wanted to do it since I read Shirley MacLaine's book.
Yes.
Back 100 years ago. So why El Camino and why now?
So El Camino, the first time I walked a portion of it, I have never walked the whole thing yet. This is going to be, a life's journey of walking it in portions because I don't have months to do it in all at once right now. But I will say the first time I did it was 25 years ago when I was living in Spain. So
Wonderful. Wow. Okay.
yes, I walked
So this has burned bright in you for a
this
long
has
time.
burned bright. So I walked about 80 miles, and that was almost at a whim that we did that, which usually no one recommends doing El Camino on a whim. But I went with a group of
Way back then you could.
yeah, a group of us exchange students, and we did it the way that you take a backpack and basically you have a sleeping bag, you have whatever clothes you have, and you have your shoes on your feet, and that's about it. We literally didn't have money. So we got to where we needed to be with what money we had, and then you live as a pilgrim. You stay in hostels. You connect with people along the path from all over the world. And I talked about it then. I didn't have these words, but I say now, El Camino provides. It just, the ethos of El Camino, we say to people whenever you walk together next to someone, strangers, you're not strangers because you're all pilgrims. No matter what religion you come from, no matter what spiritual inklings you have, you're just on this path, and everyone with their own story. And we say, buen camino. Buen camino means have a good walk, but it's so much deeper than like good walk, right? It's like deep in your heart, good walk. It's hard to translate.
You can feel it.
Yeah, you feel it. And it happens when you're exhausted. You're on mile 10 out of 12 and you're walking, and then someone looks at you and says, buen camino. And you go, buen camino. Right? It's this
that makes me want to cry.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So it came about this time because 25 years ago when I did it then, I realized last October, it all of a sudden came into my mind, and I'm going to call this a co-creation with the divine. It came to me again to say, hey, Kristen, it's time again. And this time you need to invite people to come with you. And so why don't you go ahead and do that? But this time VIP version is fine. So good thing.
I might need a foot massage somewhere in there.
Exactly. So we definitely lived it out in a beautiful way, that we were able to stay in beautiful, like 17 buildings built in 1700, been in the same family for 300 years. And then we had like 3-4 course meals at night, so we're still in our pilgrim clothes and maybe just clean, and that's it. But we did have our own bedroom and bathroom, and it was luxurious. So the days were hard, but this is why I set it up this way. I wanted us to focus on whatever transformation needed to happen. And that could be, so for anyone going into it, there's a physical training that you do. So the prep starts before you get there, but there's a physicality to it. There's a mental and emotional, a spiritual journey that you go on when you're on El Camino. And it's hard to describe. And this is why people go on their own, because they want to feel it. They want to experience it, because it's hard to describe what it is. But I will say every one of us, and so I brought a group of coaches this time, females, we're all coaches, and we were able to go on that journey because coaches need this too, our own transformations that need to happen and unlocking that needs to happen. So while on that, just to fast forward, that was my MVP this time around. We went in October, and this just in 2024. And that was actually my MVP for Exponential Joy, which is currently a brand of exponential inclusion. It's a product of that, but it has a slightly different feel because I started to realize there's a group of people that I do need to focus on right now. And, I do that inclusion work. Often it is helping bridges around in companies. There's ethnicity, there's race involved in that. There's gender, there's generational divides. We're bridging all of those. This one though was about helping women achieve greater impact and empowering them then to own their own joy, to own and lift each other up in the process, and then shape a brighter world together. because I think many of us have been burnt by each other as women. And it's such a
Thank you,
sad,
patriarchy. Thank you,
woo,
patriarchy.
it's a sad thing, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
the race to get to the top, whether it's a feeling of scarcity that's there, whether it's all these reasons why it happens. But to me, that we can't be in this space and do that to each other. So how do we strengthen each other when we're weak, when we're strong, be together to build that up and say, each one of us has this joy and it's a state of being. Sometimes we have to spark it in different ways and unlock it for each other. And sometimes it's the creativity. So this is where I'm launching a new membership that is around exponential joy for women. And we go on these amazing retreats. Spain, one is El Camino. I'm doing that again in October. So October 2025, a different leg of the journey we're going to go on. And then another one is in June, at the end of June. And we're going to go to Spain, but that's for not hiking. That is for Camp Joy. And we're going to actually have a time of sparking and unlocking that inner child and sparking joy. So
Sounds fantastic. Oh
yeah.
my God, count me in.
Woohoo!
Oh my goodness. No, I am gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And as women, it's funny, I find myself just interviewing women on this podcast now, which was not my goal per se, but I am intrinsically interested in uplifting the voices of women. I want everyone to have their voice uplifted,
Yeah.
but particularly women.
Mm.
Now is our time.
Yeah.
As we're in the fourth turning, as we're in the collapse, now is our time to uplift each other and birth this new world.
That's right. And I think the words maybe we've used together, or I know at least we resonate on, but, stepping into your true power, embracing what lights you up. To me, that's what the joy piece brings. And that's been in my heart. My middle name is Joy. So when I say this to people, like, oh yeah, of course. But for me, it's not about, even in how you described your podcast, I love how you talk about the edge and that there are rough edges. And sometimes there's the dark and we bring out the light, but you need both to show the other. And, at the same time, it's, I feel right now for me, what I can bring to this space is how to embrace the light and what lights you up, because it feels so dark sometimes. And, so it's not that everyone who comes to be a part of this is in the space of depression, right? But we all have this thing in our heart, a darkness that it's figuring out. For many of us, it could be passions. What is the passion that's there? Like, not talking about work passion. For me, passions outside that light me up. Yeah. What are the other things? And for me, it's one of the things is exploring spirituality and going deeper into that. Another thing is painting. Another thing is playing piano, right? There are these other passions that actually I used to do that I let go of because life started to happen. And then I look backward and I'm like, oh, that burnout happened after about 10 years of not doing any hobbies.
Yeah.
Right. And so
not enjoying any of the things that give me, that feel like they inspire my soul, that give
yes.
me beauty, connect me to my inner beauty.
That's right. Exactly. And then for some, so this is actually part of the membership, is there's the first, so it's an annual membership. I have people come in because the first 6 months, and it's reoccurring, people can jump in whenever, but we're going to first talk about passion and work on our own passion projects. And then the second 6 is compassion and working on compassion projects, because right, we need to have, there's the piece of us and our own grounding and finding that inner beauty, and then it's the sharing of that inner beauty and sharing of that joy that we have.
Yeah. So, open-heartedly, but yeah, and how it's received and how it's given. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm looking at the time. My goodness, we could go on and on and on, but we are truly at the end of our time. I have been so moved by this conversation. Thank you so much for the work that you do in the world and for sharing it on the Edge of Everyday podcast, Kristen.
Thank you for having me, Sandra. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I loved where we went with this conversation too. So thank you. Thank you for guiding us.
A complete pleasure. So we can find Kristen.
You can find me on LinkedIn. So Kristin Joy Ekkens, but you can also find me. The website that I'll point you to right now is www.exi.global. So that's for exponential inclusion.
Wonderful. Thank you again. And to my wonderful listeners, I thank you for being with us here on the Edge of Every Day. Remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. Till we speak again, take good care.